The Chipmunk and the Earthquake. Not long ago, on a California shore, a chipmunk played in the sun, gathered nuts, and enjoyed running from rock to rock through the tall green grass. The chipmunk didn't know much about the world, but lived from moment to moment, enjoying his life. He'd been born in a special place, filled with sunlight and plentiful food. However, one dark day, an earthquake suddenly shook the dirt beneath the chipmunk, and without warning, the chipmunk fell into a deep hole. He lay covered with rocks and dirt and shut out from the sun. The chipmunk was so stunned by the suddenness of the earthquake that he hardly reacted at all, but lay covered in the dark and gloomy hole. For days, the chipmunk barely moved. Sometimes a tear would run from his eye. The hole was so dark and the earthquake so sudden that the chipmunk almost forgot about the sunshine, the green grass, and the nuts that he loved so much. He forgot about the other chipmunks in his life, and even the birds that had flown over his head. The blackness of the hole was so great that the chipmunk decided to give up, to remain in the darkness of the hole forever. No one will notice or care, the chipmunk thought to himself. I can't bear to exist anymore. This darkness is so overwhelming. It feels as if I'm a part of it. And the spirit of the chipmunk almost gave up. But the chipmunk hadn't counted on the special fire deep within him that refused to hear these words and began to demand that the chipmunk free himself. Find a way out of the hole, into the sunlight again, demanded the spirit. Evaluate what you really want. At first the chipmunk ignored this tiny voice of rebellion within him, but the voice became louder and louder until the chipmunk couldn't ignore it anymore. This voice reawakened the deep need within the chipmunk to see the sunlight and to run in the grass. So the chipmunk began to dig, slowly at first and then more quickly, until he had found a way to dig himself out of the darkness of the hole and back into the light. The eyes of the chipmunk took a little while to become used to the light again, and as his eyes began to focus, he could see the effects of the earthquake. But gradually, the sun warmed his body, and the smells in the air awakened his spirit even more, and the chipmunk found a way to run again, to see again, and to find joy in his life. Of course, he never forgot about the earthquake, for earthquakes have their own special memory. But the chipmunk tucked that memory into a special place in his heart and spent much time listening and learning from the spirit within him that it demanded he dig his way out of the dark hole and into the sun. Hello, this is Mandy, and as I give you different keys, I want you to think of me and these keys as that spirit within which is not giving up, which step by step is starting to unlock and to find your inner self again. Because we all going to get out of this, but we'll have those special memories, just like the earthquake, memories that never go away. And as you're thinking about that, I want to now just explain a little bit about the different processes that one goes through. Trauma affects everybody in a different way. Some people aren't as affected by it or seem not to be affected by it as other people. To just refer back to the introvert extrovert, the introvert to the outside world may not look as if he's affected, where the extrovert is talking. So again, there's a miscommunication. But with any trauma in one's life, we go through a grief process. And this grief process is something I'm going to explain to you in various stages. Because the various levels we go through a denial, we go through guilt, we go through a blaming and a shaming, if you want to add it. We go through anger and we go through depression. And these don't happen in a set order. They will happen, sometimes the depression will be greater, sometimes the anger greater. And remember too, everyone in the family is going through these different feelings at different times. And just to go on to the first one, the denial, I think we're pretty much all through that now, because we've now realized that this is real. And I will explain more about the other stages later on. But what I want you to realize too is that some of the people who seem to get through it better may not have had traumatic events in the past. Because when one has a traumatic event, it brings up all the feelings and emotions of other traumas that you've experienced. And you may not know where these feelings are coming from, but suddenly you've got this mixture of feelings that is just buzzing around in your head. And go back to your journal and write and write and write. And before we go into the grief stage, I want to just talk about nature a little bit. And that when there is a fear, many people just talk about fight or flight, but there's more stages to that. The first is if you see a herd of springbuck grazing, you'll suddenly see one or two of them pricking up their ears because they've heard something. So this is your fright. And then they'll freeze. There may be a twitch of a tail or the ears. And suddenly, some will run. They'll flee. Others will straight away start fighting. Others, then, once they see they're not getting away from the fleeing, or they've then tried to turn to fight, will give up and go into what we call a fugue state, where they're giving up and they're just ready to die. And now, when we go on to the grief stages, if you understand this, you'll understand where some of your feelings are coming from. And the more you understand, you will realize that what you're feeling is not wrong. There's no right or wrong feelings. What you feel, you feel. Hi, this is Mandy. Just to remind you, this is not psychotherapy. I am just giving you keys to help you through this time. If you need help, please go and see a therapist.